Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining. We're going to give it just a minute or two while everyone hops on and is able to log in. But in the meantime, I'd love for everyone to share in the Q&A section where you're joining from. LA, New York, Florida. I know we have people from all over, so would love to see where you're tuning in from. I see Christine coming in from Florida. Christine, great to meet you. Thanks for being here. Nana, Dallas, hey, good to see you again. Thanks for joining. Florida, Alexandra, good to have you here as well. All right. Nancy, San Diego, thank you for joining us. Adam, also San Diego. So far, SoCal is outnumbering. Well, we're tied with Florida, but we'll give it just another moment. Lisa, San Francisco, thanks for joining us. Ritu from Beverly Hills, Joseph from Jacksonville. That has a ring to it, Joseph from Jacksonville. But in just a moment, we will have my co-host Isabella Hughes from EstateMin join, and we'll give it just another moment. We have Paul from Los Angeles. Paul, thanks for joining. I'm also based in LA. Isabella, where are you based right now? Where are you calling in from? I know you're all over.
I'm in New York at the moment, but I'm actually in somewhere, as you can hear from my accent, very special. I'm in the Irish government offices in MetLife, just above Grand Central. So yeah, it's a fabulous location. You can't see behind me, but I have the most beautiful view.
Love that. Just some Irish perks in New York.
I know, a little bit of home. We tend to stick together.
That's great. All right, well, I will kick it off. Good morning or afternoon to everyone joining us. We have people tuning in from all over the country. And if you haven't already, please drop what city you're joining in from. We'd love to know in the Q&A section. So today we'll be talking about how to successfully scale your trust and estate practice. If you are a professional looking to grow your practice or create more efficiency through technology, and of course AI will be a topic, you're in the right place. My name is Maya Bopshow. I'm CEO at Trust Properties USA. We're the leading trust and probate real estate company with 16 offices throughout California, Florida, and a nationwide network. We'll be hosting the session today. I am excited to introduce you to my brilliant friend, Isabella Hughes, in just a moment. She's the CEO and founder of EstateMin. Isabella and I became friends at the Heckerling Estate Planning Conference in Florida and connected over each of us scaling our respective businesses, leveraging tools like AI and processes and systems. And we're excited to share all that we know with you. And the goal today is for each of you to leave with practical steps to work more efficiently, reduce costs, and better serve your clients. This isn't just about the theory. We want you to have real tools and workflows and results. So here's what we are covering today. We're also going to be having a Q&A at the end, but I will be monitoring throughout, so I know you're going to have a lot of great questions. Please, we want this to be interactive. And of course, at the end, after you've learned a whole bunch, we have the opportunity for you to win a $100 Amazon gift card following a Trust Properties USA case study. So, with that, I will hand it over to the lovely Isabella. Here, I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll let you jump in. Isabella, you're still on mute, just an FYI.
Okay, can you all see my screen okay?
We see it.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, listen, guys, thank you so much for having me. Maya's correct. Maya's a great friend. We did meet at Heckerling, which I'm sure lots of you know if you're here from Trust and Estates. It is a fabulous conference that I definitely recommend people coming to if they can. My background is a little bit different. I am obviously Irish, as you can probably tell. My career started off as an international athlete for Ireland originally. And unfortunately, my dream was to go to the Olympics. That didn't happen for me. So I went back to school and I got my law degree and I subsequently went to work in a law firm. When I first started to work in a law firm, I was so excited. I really enjoyed the work that I did. I was in the probate department to start with, and as you all know, probate is work that you're working with clients who are, not always in the best headspace. It's work that's really, really important. It's also work that can be quite messy around scattered documents, frustrated clients, lots of back and forth and what we call friction. So that was something that I always thought about. That's when I met one of my co-founders. His name was Oisin Dolphin. He worked for one of the biggest tech companies in London. I'm sure most of you know it. And he came to me as a client. And I remember I handed him our form to be filled out. It was a paper form. And I said, fill this out and then you can give it back to me and I'll retype it into my computer and we'll go from there. And he stopped me dead. He was like, "What do you mean it's in paper?" I said, "Well, this is how we do things." And he said, "No, that doesn't make sense to me as a client." And I was like, "Well, there's not really another way to do it that we know of." So that's ultimately how we began EstateMin. The goal was to make the experience not only easier for clients, but also to improve the law firm's life. Day-to-day activities like following up with clients, gathering documents, that key information gathering piece, it shouldn't be so difficult. And it should allow you to focus on the law, not the opposite way around. So that's really where we began with EstateMin in Ireland, and we launched in the US last year. We work with firms all over the US and it's been incredible. I always say I love working with law firms. I love the passion that lawyers bring, and I love the fact that they're also running businesses. And like all of you here, you want to be successful in your business, you want to scale your business. So thank you for making the time. I do think it's going to be a great session. And the fact that you're all making the effort to be here, I think that's, step one. You have to show up for your law firm and set yourself up for success. So with that being said, let me jump into the next slide on my screen. So this is all about, attorneys who scale successfully don't just take on more volume. When we talk to a lot of law firms, they talk about wanting to scale their practice and grow and make it bigger and better. The problem is when you take on more volume, that can actually mean that sometimes it causes more chaos and more problems if you don't have, the key structure set up in place. Ultimately, there's no point in taking on more cases and hiring more staff if your margins aren't improving. So it is something that you do have to think about. Take off your lawyer hat and actually put on your business hat and say, okay, what makes sense for my business? Because sometimes more headcount can actually make more stress. And scaling your law firm is actually about repeatable business versus getting new clients all of the time. It's something that you always need to be aware of, that the actual lifetime value of your client is sometimes more valuable than getting new clients. Your estate planning client, they don't just need a will, they actually need you at every life event. If they're having new children, that's a time for them to update their estate plan and update their will. If they're buying new property, once again, they may need you there as well to help with the property sale and the property purchase. Ultimately, attorneys who scale, it's all about, repeatable, dependable, ultimately scalable businesses. So that's something that I'd love to emphasize. But obviously, Maya and I want to make the session as interactive as possible. There's been a huge amount of talk all about AI recently, so I would love to talk a little bit about, what the set, what get a feel for the room. How many of you are using AI? How many of you aren't using AI? So I think we'll be able to pop up some questions here and actually get a poll going, which would be great. So let's see here about the poll. Okay, I'm going to launch that poll. I'm going to give you all a few minutes to have a look. I hope you can all see the poll okay.
And this is a safe space. It's okay if the answer is no.
Yes, absolutely.
This
So
is
when
your
I
AI
started doing
support
this,
group.
when I started doing this at first, when we first started in law, it was a case of I think I was in a county in Ireland. This is in December 2024. People were new to AI, and I said to the room, who here is using AI? And I remember it was a room of about maybe 50, 60 attorneys, and only one of them put up their hand. And they were actually quite embarrassed to put their hand up because they're the only attorney that was putting their hand up. And people really did feel, a little bit self-conscious. They did feel, this was a very strange experience for them. So that's where it began. Obviously, I do lots of CLEs for like the likes of the New York Bar Association, Oklahoma Bar Association, Texas recently. Every time I ask this question, the answer is always changing and always improving. So I'm going to give you a few more minutes to look at to answer the questions. And then I'm actually going to end the poll and I'm going to put it out there for everybody to see. Okay, just 1 or 2 more minutes now, and then I'll share it. Okay,
It's
I'm now gonna end
anonymous,
the
by the
call.
way.
It is totally
So thank
anonymous.
you for
That's so
your
important.
honesty.
Okay, so we're sharing the results here. Okay, so wow, 99% of you have used AI. That is a huge increase from just September of last year, where the answer was 68%. In November, I did another CLE and that was actually gone up to 74%. So now they're at 99%. That just shows the significant growth of people that have used AI, whether that be ChatGPT, whether that actually be, like Claude or Gemini or even Copilot on your computer. Now, how many of you have used AI on a day-to-day basis? Okay, cool. That's around 54%. That is also growing itself. I think the way that we're using AI these days, it's not just about your workflow. A lot more people are starting to use it personally, which is obviously great. I mean, it's great for myself. I use it to search for flights today on Claude Cowork. It's something that is gradually getting better and better. And it's important to realize that we're actually at the beginning of what AI's capabilities are going to do. I was in a talk yesterday with one of the founders of a massive AI company, and he was actually saying that AI has done so much for, corporate workspaces and actually like the rest of the world, but actually they haven't done a huge amount for consumers, and that's what they anticipate is going to be next. But okay, are you confident using AI? 57% of you said that you were confident, 43% no, said no. Okay, this is a really, really important stat. It kind of shows, roughly 50-50, 60-40 are comfortable and confident using AI. AI is always getting better, and I would argue that a lot of you that are using AI in work, particularly, you are using it to fact check, you're making sure that you check your sites, or you check your sources. That's the best way to get confidence in AI is just, to give it a simple task and just check it yourself and then gradually let your confidence grow. So that's really cool. Listen, AI is obviously something that's growing. It's something that's consistently getting better. So that's great. I'll share those results now so you can see and have a quick look. And then I'm actually going to reshare my screen again because I'd love to talk a little bit about, the net promoter score. That's something that I think will be really cool. Okay, so all that being said, the reason that we use AI is really about, improving our client experience and actually improving, how we as attorneys, as legal execs, as paralegals, improve our service. All of that comes back down to the client experience. So Clio recently released a report on NPS, which is what we call Net Promoter Systems. Essentially, what that is where clients would rate the services out of 100 of how likely are they to recommend their service to other people. A good NPS is about 60. Unfortunately, law firms were rated at about 25, so that's not great. These are just some reviews, not from law firms. I promise that we haven't taken any of these from your websites or anything like that. I also don't know who's here, so that's not possible. But these are from other companies that have NPS scores of 25. As you can see, they're pretty negative. So that does show the ability for you guys, if you're able to give a good service to your client, that also gives you a great opportunity to kind of really hone in on that repeatable, scalable revenue. You're getting recurring revenue. If you give a client great service, you know that they're going to come back to use you. You know that they're going to recommend you to their friends. You know that that's a really great, repeatable, recurring revenue business. So I would always say is when we're looking at other law firms, if your key selling point can be excellent client experience, that's really positive, and that's something that I always recommend. Okay, before we go any further, I just want to emphasize the importance of knowing your numbers. So, for a lot of us, when you're so busy, it's hard to know just how many cases you're running, how many hours it takes for you to run a case. Obviously, you know how many staff you have, or even the average price per matter is tough. But these are all key statistics that, as attorneys that want to scale, you need to know. How many cases are you running? How long does it take to run each of these cases? For example, is it 20 hours for a probate? Is it 5 hours for an estate plan? All metrics that are just really important for you to know, because ultimately if you can't measure capacity, you can't scale that capacity. So it's something that it is a little bit of homework, but I would recommend you sit down for an hour or so looking at your case management and actually going through it. It is something that you can figure out pretty quickly, but you do just have to be ready to kind of commit the time actually to do it. Okay. So in terms of, what is actually going to break when your practice is growing, well, Usually it comes down to zero structure, scattered documents, staff dependency, and no onboarding process. The reason that we talk about all these key points about, when you actually start to grow your practice is because we've seen it firsthand. We've seen it in Ireland, we've seen it all across the US. What happens for a lot of firms is they're ready to take on new cases, but unfortunately they haven't set themselves up for success. And that, the law firm usually stretches itself out because obviously they want to take on more cases, but they don't have the processes in place to actually get ready and go. So these are the few kind of common mistakes that we've seen. And I guess the most important piece is, how can we actually dive in and have a quick look at how you can avoid them and learn from others' mistakes. So the first mistake that we've seen is where there's zero structure from intake. Ultimately, when you have zero structure, that means that you're starting off on the back foot. Because you're beginning the cases, you don't know where to begin. Your staff don't know where to begin. They don't know what happens next. And your clients, they don't know where to go either. It's one of those things that you really need to get your intake system right, your onboarding system right, and get it all really concise and really, really correct. I always love to say you wouldn't start driving your car without knowing where you're going. You wouldn't just follow a general gist in the road. You don't want this to be you driving through the woods, knowing roughly where you're going, but there's an angry client on the phone saying, when are you going to arrive? So this is why creating structures is really important and it's a great place to begin. Leads on to my next point, clients shouldn't be the ones chasing their attorneys. When you have a good system in place and a good intake structure and a good process, clients will know. They'll already feel taken care of. If your client sits down at the very beginning of your session, you'll say, this is how we do things, this is how we work. Every law firm is different, so it is important that you have your own personal touch. But if your client understands the process, they're not going to have so many follow-up questions down the line if they know what's happening throughout the experience. Ultimately, what you don't want is clients chasing the attorneys. That's ultimately going to affect your net promoter score, which is then going to affect your repeatable revenue. Another point is a single point of failure. This is something that I've seen so often in law firms, once again, all over the US and all over Ireland. Usually there becomes one dependent person in the firm that may not be the firm owner, they may not be a managing partner, they could actually be an attorney that all they do is, for argument's sake, they just do probate. That's their job. And everything is working absolutely fine. They're working on their own system, they have their own process of doing things. The rest of the firm have never looked at, they don't really know it. They've never had to because it's working so well in the corner. But when that person leaves the firm, which is very common, people do tend to leave, um, the rest of the firm is really in disarray. We have seen this happen so often. We've had to see litigation partners jump into probate. We've had to see, paralegals running estate plans. It's really difficult when this happens. And that is
Raise
what you
your
want to
hand
avoid.
and react if this has ever happened to you or a firm that you're part of. I'll start.
Please. I'm seeing some hands. Okay, yeah, yeah. There's some people that have got the war wounds. I totally get that for sure. Yeah, it's really tough when that happens. And with the best will in the world, you're suddenly in trouble. So it can be tough. And that's why it's really important to have a good process. Even if there's somebody else that, even if you have that kind of core member of staff that does look after this, if they have a process in place that's transparent, if they get sick, they may not even have to leave. But if they get sick or they're not able to come to work one day, there needs to be some form of, watching what's going on, understanding the process. That if they do leave, anyone in the firm can jump in and there's a good system of record, there's good notes, there's good follow-ups. It's very clear and consistent about what's going to happen. So that's something that, please keep that in mind as you go forward. Ultimately, I always like to say there are two questions, that determine whether a law firm is ready to scale. And from my experience, these are critical questions. The first one is, are you profitable? And the second one is, are you scalable? The reason that I say these are so important is, well, if your business isn't profitable, you may not be able to sustain your business. It might take a long time, but eventually the business will run out of funds and resources if the business is not producing a profit. And then why scalable? Well, there's that old saying that if you're not growing, you're dying. There's no sitting still, especially I've seen across the US when everyone is so ready, everyone's so out there ready to make business and ready to give their clients a great experience. You don't always see that across the world, but the US is one of those places that, has that magical feel, especially while I'm in New York. But ultimately, there's no sitting still, and I really do believe that's true. Aside from that, law firms are always, they always have to serve their local community. I hear so often from law firms that they do absolutely no marketing, that this is something that people just show up on their doorstep and they have to do it because the client has nowhere else to go. So that's something that's really common. Raise your hand if that's been you, if you don't have capacity to take on more clients, but they're just showing up anyway. Yeah, I'm seeing some hand goes up. Okay, yeah, for sure. I mean, some other businesses would say that's like the most amazing model in the world because you don't have to put any spend into marketing. I would say it's actually quite a challenge sometimes when you're already working so hard to keep everything moving forward, to keep everything on the road, and things like this are going on. Okay. So these are some things that I've seen in the past of where I've seen law firms break down. The first one was law firm A, very, very similar to the law firm that I worked at, which was our systems were predominantly pen and paper and phone calls. We actually did put some money into marketing. We felt that we were ready to start taking on cases. So we were paying for Google ads and Meta ads. All of a sudden, we had about 10 new cases that month and we had no system in place. The way that we did our intake was the client would come to the firm. We would generally talk to them. We'd have a nice conversation. We would say roughly what the process was, which was we're going to gather the information. We're then going to compile it. We're going to prepare the court forms. We're going to submit it to court and then we're going to distribute it. And that was it. It sounded very simple. It sounded like we had a process, but actually that's a description of a legal process. That is not a description of a law firm process. It's certainly not a description of a scalable business where your client feels fully taken care of. The way that we were doing intake was through pen and paper. So what we would do is after we met that client, we would send them away with lots of paper forms and we would say to them, fill this out and then send it back to us when it's done. So when we get it back in the office, I would then go through it. I'd circle the pieces of information that were missing, which were usually far and throughout the documents because clients don't have a huge amount of information. Also, by the time they're on page 3, they'd had enough. They weren't particularly interested. So then I would have to make phone calls to the client and try to gather the rest of this information. This is really difficult. Clients also have full-time jobs. I can sit there and all day and call them, but clients couldn't always answer the phone. Usually I'd have to leave a voicemail. They'd bring me back the next day. Hopefully I'd be by the phone to pick it up. And it was just a real challenge. And it would really drag out, the amount of time that case took and something that you just really do want to avoid. So ultimately, that was not a scalable system that we did learn the hard way, that ultimately my co-founder and I did meet because of it, and we did develop a statement. The second, law firm B, where the probate lead has left. This is something that, we see all the time. I know many of you have experienced this. We had a large law firm in New York recently. They came to us like that. They had maybe 10, 15 attorneys, super successful practice. They had one department lead in the trust in the State Department and he got a new job and he left. So all of a sudden, that was that litigation partner I was talking about. He had to jump into the trust and estate practice. So not only were the clients a little bit confused, but also the litigation clients, they're suddenly in the lurch as well. It's a very awkward system to suddenly kind of swap hands easily. So it is something that, as law firm scale, you need to make sure there's a repeatable, scalable system in place. Had that attorney already have a system that it was very easy to jump into, like EstateMin or like others, it would have been easy to continue. Finally, law firm C. This is one that we do see a lot. This is where there's no system of record. This is something that I see a lot of the time. It is very stressful for not just the attorneys, the paralegals, for the staff, for the client as well, because I always say documents are floating. Information is literally moving around the firm between email threads, phone calls, WhatsApp messages sometimes, iMessage, phone calls between the client and the attorney, all these different things. This is really stressful for everyone involved. And we actually saw a case recently where a law firm was taking information. They had a fillable PDF. The client was filling it out. They submitted it to the law firm. They then followed up with an email to say, by the way, forgot to mention these two apartments. The attorney saw the two apartments. He then forwarded it over to his paralegal. She presumed that he had taken stock of it. He presumed she had taken stock of it. And it was one of those things that, other than the fact that they literally caught it at the very last second, and because the client said, by the way, did you get those apartments? It's something that does happen, and it is something that clients and law firms, they can get caught out really easily sometimes. So you need to have a really clear system of record. How are you communicating with the clients? Are all the notes here? Are all the documents here? Something that we work pretty closely on with law firms. Okay, so that's, kind of leads me into, where most law firms are still operating. It's usually off Excel spreadsheets, email threads, post-it notes. I love talking to law firms and I'll say, do you use post-it notes and they'll hold up about 7 in their hands, all with like super important information on it: clients' social security numbers, valuations for documents, physical appraisal documents that haven't been scanned in yet, all these different things, because they're getting this information in drips and drabs and it's all coming from different places. So it's something that we see all the time. Ultimately, all these different systems, this is manual tracking. So that is something that, it's maybe 5 or 6 years ago, there was no other option. Now, we're really talking about systems and processes in firms. That's becoming the new mindset. So I always say with firms, AI is great at doing this. It's a great way to help you research things, great way to help you keep on top, great way to ask questions, learn new things. But ultimately, you need technology that's actually going to change, how you keep track of things. You need a system or a process in place. You can build these systems yourself. I always say to law firms that, I love when I see law firms being proactive. I love when that I see them creating checklists, manual automated reminders, all these different things. A lot of law firms don't have the time, especially some solo attorneys, they don't have the 4 hours to sit down and say, right, this is what we're doing. And that's really where we're seeing a lot of law firms come to us, looking for what we call a plug and play system, which is really important. Because ultimately, the firms that are scaling, they have a clear, repeatable system that can be used by any member of the firm. They have one source of truth. That means that any single firm member can have a look. They know this is where the information goes. You're not going to have your secretary writing some information on a post-it note, your paralegal coming to you with physical documents. It all flows into the one place that everybody can see. And there's one clear workflow system. So essentially, we have the information. What happens next? Do we have the forms? Are the forms complete? It's about actually, bringing that information and bringing it through a workflow. It's something that, the in technology companies and some large enterprises, they always talk about workflows, but it's something that hasn't always kind of trickled down to the smaller firms. So I'll be giving a demo of EstateMin in a minute, but what I would recommend for any firms to do at the end of the day, if they have 10 minutes, maybe it's one workflow, maybe it's your estate planning workflow. Write it down on a piece of paper, say, okay, this is step 1, this is step 2, and this is step 3. What do I need to do in order to achieve each of these steps? Write all these steps down, and from there you can go, okay, I need to invite the client in for an initial consult. Next, I need to send a follow-up meeting. Third, I need to send out a client portal to gather the information. And it's from there that you'll be able to build out these workflows. Because I know it's easy to say build out a workflow and you go, how do I do that? Start small, start with a bite-sized piece of information and go from there. Okay, are there any questions, Maya, or any comments before I move on to a quick demo?
I see. Quick question from Ashley
Yeah.
Edward who said, how many are in this meeting? It has varied a little bit, but we did have just over 200 registrants. So thank you all for being here again. We are your technology AI support group. There's no dumb questions. So whatever other questions you all have, please enter it in the chat. But
Mm-hmm.
Isabella, I'm ready for you to give us some practical tools with the EstateMin demo.
Okay, awesome. Right, so I'll jump over here. Can you see my screen okay, Maya? Awesome. Okay, great. So this is the EstateMin home screen. The very first step when I was working was that I needed one place that was just going to be for my trust and estate cases. The firm I was in was running litigation files, family law, criminal. We did everything. So actually having one place that would keep it all together. Most importantly here is that all this links in with your Clio and your MyCase and the case management systems. You don't want to have separated systems. About maybe a year ago, everyone used to say, you need a system, you need technology. Whereas now the thought is actually all these different technologies, they all need to talk. So that's really important. So that's really kind of, around the premises of EstateMin. So these are all my trust and estate cases. I do estate administration, probate, planning, intestacy, you name it, we have it. When I click into one of these cases, so this is a probate case for argument's sake, the very first thing that I see is an estate overview. So that means we have everything here in the one place. It's not spread out across Excel spreadsheets. It's not spread out across Word documents or post-it notes or phone calls. It's all here in the one place. So we can see all of the people, we can see all of the assets, all of the debts, and all of the administrative expenses, all here in the one place. We charge on a per firm basis, and this is purely for the reason that if a client were to ring your secretary and they would say, hey, did I remember to tell you about my cousin who's also a beneficiary? Your secretary can log in and they can give a really great answer to your client, really clear, yes, we do, or no, we don't. So that's something that is really important and one of those scalable, repeatable systems, and really goes into that transparency point that I was making earlier. But anyway, essentially, we've all the people listed down here. Obviously, like I said, post-it notes always happening. I wanted to build a virtual post-it note that if I was working from California or New York, this is the note that I have on that client, and everybody in the firm can see it. You're not going to be ringing that client at 6 a.m. by accident, thinking that it's 9 a.m. their time. Obviously, there's a
Is
huge amount of it. Sorry,
Isabella,
Maya?
quick question from
Yeah.
Adam. How did all or most of the data here end up in the one place? Did the client input it up front or question mark?
I love that question, Adam. Yes, that's so important. All this information can be entered by the law firm or can be entered by the client through the client portal. So I'll be able to show you what that looks like in just 1 minute. But for now, let's presume that, the client is given all the information and we're looking at how it's centralized. But yes, the clients can do it, which I will show you. So this is one of the clients. This is an executor. Let me click into this. Obviously, as you know, there's a lot of intake systems that will do like the name, email, phone number. It's actually not enough when there's so much more information to gather. That's why we gather the information of, not just the client's name, their email, their phone number. We're actually getting their relationship to the decedent, their date of birth, any fiduciary fields. If this person was a beneficiary, it's also going to ask beneficiary questions as well. So it's always prompting yourself and the client to give the right information. All this information, I will say that this does sync over to your case management. So anything that's in EstateMin will also be in your case management and vice versa, which is just important before I go on. But essentially, you can see all the people at a glance. I'm Irish. This beneficiary list would go on for years if I were to fill it out. So when the client fills it out for you, you can only imagine how much time you're saving for Irish families. But essentially, this is a clear central place of the people section. Next, we have the assets. Maya, I'm sure you've seen, I'm sure you have some great insights around assets as well. But with law firms and with clients in particular and assets, this can get very messy very quickly when it comes to the different documents that go with the different assets. So what we built out here is one place that you can see it. This is replacing that Excel spreadsheet that you're filling out, then you're sending it to your counterparts in your firm. They're creating a copy and filling out their own one. And before you know it, you've got two different Excel spreadsheets. This really centralizes it all. How it works is you press add asset and it's going to ask you to put in the asset. Because EstateMin is so intuitive, it's always telling you the right questions to ask. So for example, if your client has cryptocurrency and you've never seen cryptocurrency before, you can click in here and it's actually going to tell you what questions you need to ask your client. This is something that, you can't be the lawyer, so you can't be the expert in absolutely everything, but we're going to help you as much as we can and we're going to tell you why you need this information. So for example, if there is crypto, you need this access method. This is why you need it. All these different things are so important. Next, we actually have in the asset section, you can see here we have notes, similarly like the post-it notes, but we also have any key documents that are associated with this file. You can also see there's no assets, there's no documents attached with this property either. So it's always about keeping everything centralized. So for example, this is a real estate property. When I click into this, I can see a huge amount of extensive data about the property. I can see obviously the address. I can see the value on the date of death, the current value, the date we got that current value, the property type, all these different things. But most importantly, we actually have the key documents associated with that property here. So we can see the deed of property, we can see the appraisal, and we can see a photograph of that property if we want. So this is really where it's saving you so much time. Because what we actually had was a law firm in Boston, right? They were working with us really closely. We released this feature. It was a feature that I wanted when I was working because I realized it was taking me a lot of time. When I released this feature, I got a phone call the very next day from this firm in Boston. And I was like, oh my God, this is pretty urgent. What's going on? And I spoke to the law firm. They were thrilled. Essentially, their process in their law firm was right before they submitted everything to court, they had to do a double check of all of the valuations, which involved looking at every single appraisal and every single document on file to make sure that it matched. All these documents were spread out across email threads. They were saved into their case management under random names that the client had sent over, and it was all moving around them. They loved the fact that this was making all the documents stationary, and they actually did a case study going back to our metrics. This was saving them 5 hours per file alone. So something so small like this made a world of difference to that firm. The debts work the exact same way, keeping track of all of your debts. Once again, we're automatically calculating everything. This is a fun feature that we built out actually based on firm feedback last week. So I love working with firms. I just think it's so much fun, especially in the US. Obviously, in Ireland, I knew exactly what to build because I did it every single day. Whereas what we build in the US, I always say it's based on firm feedback. So if you're ever a firm that thinks this is taking too much time, there has to be a better way to do this, let us know. We love to work with them. This is an example. So obviously you're going to reject some debts. You need to know what date did you reject this debt. So you can actually put that in here to keep track of for the whole firm. So that's something that works really well. That was based off of firm feedback. Anyway, administrative expenses work the exact same way, keeping track of every single thing that the firm pays out, attaching any invoices, who it was paid by. Most importantly, you need to make sure that you always recoup your expenses. And just keeping track of absolutely everything is super important for your bookkeeping records. That's the estate overview. I'm going to show you now how the client portal works. But I hope some of you take, if it's not a statement, I hope that some of you are thinking about the best way to centralize all this information for yourself. And if it is a statement and this is something that can be helpful, I think I have a demo code after this if you're interested. Anyway, the client portal.
Isabella, I'm
Yeah,
gonna give you a question from Joseph. It says,
please.
what's the fastest way to audit a law firm's workflows to spot billable tasks eaten up by admin work like conflict checks, calendaring, and document prep?
A great way to auto check that probably is actually bringing in an auditor company. I know that depending on your case management, they have a lot of consultants that will do that for you. What this firm in Boston did, they actually did it manually. They did one case without using EstateMin, and they did one case with EstateMin. Obviously, they have to be similar enough cases, and they're a pretty big firm. They had capacity to do that. Your case management, you should always have the ability to time track. So pop that clock on whenever you step into a case. That's what I would always say, or actually look at some consultants. If you're using Practice Panther as your software, there will be a Practice Panther software consultant out there. I assure you that is readily available for audits. It's a large part of what these softwares do. So I definitely recommend starting there as a key point if you don't want to do it yourself.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Awesome. Okay, great. So the client portal, how this works is you'll go into the client portal, you'll press send invite. Now, for a lot of firms, they'll say, my clients are a little bit elderly. I don't know if this makes sense. And I always say, if your client can use email, then they're able to use the client portal. So let me share my screen now and show you what the client sees. So because the client, when they get the invite email, they actually log in through what we call a magic link. And this is what the client would see. This is a totally white label platform. So what that means is your law firm's logo, your law firm's color scheme, everything to do with your law firm is here for the client. It looks really, really simple because that's what we want it to be. We want the clients to be able to log in, not feel overwhelmed, to have a pleasant experience, and actually just work down through the case themselves. So it's like a checklist because that's ultimately what this is. It's a process. This is all pre-set up. You don't need to put any input into it. I always say law firms don't have 6 hours to sit down and write the different various questions. If you start with EstateMin, you can actually get your first case up and running in less than 5 minutes because it is so quick. But essentially the client logs in, they look at the steps, they'll be able to go into the people, they can press start, and they can press add person. So the client can add whichever role it is. They're giving all this information here in the one place. It's always, once again, it's always, intuitive. We have info boxes the whole way through. Usually the law firm will have a discussion with the client beforehand in their initial consultation. They'll know who the beneficiaries are, and the law firm will say, okay, we're going to send you an invite after this to fill this out in the client portal. The client will be able to type it in, and once again, they'll be able to put in all this information. EstateMin is intuitive. So once again, you can see here, this client, we've said they're a beneficiary. Therefore, we're putting in beneficiary questions too. If it's yes, no, I don't know. If it's yes, then it pops up the next question. What we found speaking to a lot of clients that were using, fillable PDFs or they were filling out long spreadsheets from the law firm was that they felt really overwhelmed. They best intentions in the world, they jump in to get started and they just felt, oh my God, there's so much to do here. I don't want to do this now. And they'd really put it off. So that will kind of extend the amount of time that it takes for a case to take over. And also for you yourself, you need to know, right, this case is going to take 6 months. This is how long this process is going to take. And you need the client to really kind of lock in with you and work alongside you. So that's people.
Isabella, a quick
Yeah.
question from Joseph. It says, how do you currently protect client data when you log in to answer these questions?
Yep. So clients actually log in through a magic link. We don't have the clients create a new password or a new email for two reasons. One, passwords can be hacked and they can also be shared. So that means that the client can only log in through the specific email that the law firm has sent to them. Client security is something that is so unbelievably important to us. My own colleague Oshin, his law firm in the middle of his process with his first parent that passed away, they actually were subject to a phishing scam, so like an email scam that came through the firm's email address from a fake client. And that firm, their information actually was put at risk. So I always say we are using the most up-to-date methods of security. Ultimately, you have to be, it's a really important question. Any software provider you ask, you need to make sure they're up to date on the most secure records. Security is something that I could talk about for another hour. It's such a big importance of mine, but ultimately we use magic links because they are more secure than passwords and email. Yeah. Okay, so the client can input all the people, all the beneficiaries, absolutely everyone here. Client can also upload any assets. So this is where the client can upload any assets. Once again, they can upload, they can upload property, they can upload cash, firearms, bonds, you name it. We've given them examples the whole way through that they're not going to have any questions. If the client was uploading a bank account, for example, we're asking them all of these relevant questions, once again with info boxes, and they can also upload any files here that they have. So that's going to all sync over to your EstateMin overview, and you'll be able to see it all in one place. Essentially, the client is working their way through, they're filling out all this information for you, and that's ultimately populating the EstateMin overview. So that's a really, really great way that we've seen work with clients. Law firms say that this is a significant time saver because they're not re-entering that client data. Once again, we work with the case managements. So all of this information here that the client has filled in, it's all been saved, documents attached, the information is here. That's all saved over to the case management too. So the documents are saved over, all of the people, if you're using Clio or My Case, they're automatically created as related contacts. That all happens itself. So that's how the client portal works. It works for estate planning, estate administration, and probate intestacy as well. But I'm focusing mainly on estate administration today, but we also have estate planning. Okay, that's the client portal. As you can see, the benefits are pretty extreme. Obviously, you're not entering that information. It is an improvement on fillable PDFs, on forms. Another really important point that this actually automates reminders to go to the clients every 2 weeks. I always say what you want is to not have to remind the client yourself. You want that to happen automatically. The client to be entering the information while you sleep, you wake up, you've got a full estate overview ready to go. And that's a good time for you to look at your timeline. Okay, what tasks do I have due? What needs to be done next in this case? What's the next thing? What's the next best step? So you can add any deadlines here. Always really, really important. If you're using task lists in your case management, that pulls them all in here as well. We also have forms. So this has been a great improvement recently and a great added benefit feature. Essentially what we do is we use AI to read all of the information in the estate overview, then they read the county information and the state information, and it actually tells the law firms which forms they need, and it tells them why. So you can see here there's real estate, therefore this is the form that you need for real estate, and it does bring you to the most up-to-date version. As you know, sometimes the courts are making updates and they're not telling us, so it's something that we always stay up to date for you so that you're never caught out. Anyway, we also have estate files, just keeping track of where the key files are. And finally, we have this review button, which is basically a second set of eyes. It's running through any potential red flags. You can see here one of those fiduciaries is not willing to serve, all these different things just to help you as you go throughout the case. I always say attorneys need eyes in the back of their heads. This is hopefully going to help you with that. Ultimately, that's what EstateMin is. We do have a huge amount of capabilities. This is a very much a high level overview. We also have document extraction, which I'd love to show you. That's launching next week. Essentially, if a client comes to you with a box of documents, which they always do, you can upload them all into EstateMin. And essentially how it works is we actually extract that data for you. So for example, if you were to upload 10 bank accounts, because we all know that sometimes clients will give you 10 bank accounts and 10 different statements. You can upload all those statements here and it will actually extract the key information for you and populate the estate overview. So that's something that is really cool that we're absolutely thrilled about coming to. But that's the end of the statement demo. As I always say, if you would like to book in with us, you can use this code here. I know it's going to come up again at the end of this discussion. I'm going to pass it over to Maya quickly. So if you want to scan this with your phone, this is great. Or you can actually go through our website and this will bring you to book a link with myself. And we can actually discuss how does this work for your law firm? What are your current processes in place? How can we help you scale? It's something that we've done all over Ireland. We do it all over the US. Even if you just want to have a quick conversation, a chat, I always love talking with people, as Maya knows. Um, my final point is we know this is saving firms, roughly 5 hours per file. I always say, don't listen to me, actually look at the hard data. If you can save 5 hours per file, what does this mean? How can that bring you to a scalable system? Once again, all this information is from my learnings with law firms, all over the world. We speak at various events worldwide, but using metrics recently, and that's why I say it's so important to use your metrics. We actually worked with Ryan Kimler, who's a CFO for law firms Net Clarity. He sat down with us and he actually went through the numbers with us of how can you add 790,000 to your law firm without any increased headcount? How can you scale efficiently? Obviously, it's not always that easy. You have to get your marketing right, you have to get your intake right, execute the cases, and then complete. And then you have a whole other set of worries, so a whole other set of worries to worry about. Sometimes more money, more problems is not always the way. Okay, would love to open up to questions.
Let's see, we have a lot now in the chat. Let's start with Peter. How do you balance automation with the personal touch so clients feel supported and not like they're getting a generic legal response? I like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something that is just so important. I always say that, that's why white labeling is important. It is your law firm colors, it's your brand logo, and it's your personal voice. I'll always say that, as well, in that initial consultation, it's about explaining to your client, this is for me to actually improve the legal experience I give you. Without this, I'm going to spend a lot of time on admin work. You want to use this because that's going to help me actually advise you further. Technology should be used to improve your relationship with the client and not remove it. That's what I would always say. That's really what you want to think about, that it's improving the relationship, not removing it. So a good example that I've heard from firms recently is instead of calling their clients to say, hey, have you have you given me that appraisal document yet? And the client either says yes or no. The law firms, they know they have that appraisal document. They know that they can now ring the client and they can say, hi, thank you so much for sending through those documents. Now the next steps are X, Y, and Z. Once again, another example of not the clients chasing the attorneys, but the attorneys actually speaking to the client and letting them know what the next steps are.
All right. And then from Tony, it says, what communication channels do legal clients prefer for case updates? And how do you centralize email, SMS, and client portal messages to avoid miscommunication?
That's a tough one. And I spoke to a law firm recently. They said, I've got 5 different client portals. I can't keep sending my clients client portals. And I totally relate to that. Like, that is just so true. And for your client's sake, that's not ideal. I know that Clio does a great job of centralizing all of that in the one place. One of my co-founders worked for Clio for 5 years, so I may be a tiny bit biased there. Most of the case managements do a very good job. Like I said, we work alongside and plug into all those case managements. I think for me, it's about looking at your client, looking at the type of case it is, and actually making your decision there. If it is a case that you are communicating with your client through phone call, text, and email, you want to make sure that you have a very good case management that is keeping all of that in place, or that you have a system like EstateMin where it's actually doing the predominantly, the document management. The client knows and they understand that if they want to log back in to see their will or their trust in an estate planning case, that's where it is, and that's going to remove that friction piece. But ultimately, it's about having clear communication with your clients and letting them know what to expect. If your client expects to just hear you by email and then suddenly they're getting text messages, it's a bit confusing. So that's kind of how I would say.
And let's see, before we do our case study and Amazon raffle, because you guys deserve a raffle for
Mm-hmm.
learning with us today, we're going to get one more question in from Timothy. It says, how do you maintain data accuracy and confidentiality when moving from manual entry to automated client intake and billing workflows?
So this is something that's really interesting. We actually know that automated integrations and automated input is more accurate than manual. Biggest example that we see is when you're spelling names, you're handwriting the names down, and then later on you're going to put it into a court form. and you're looking at an or thinking, is that an L? Is it a Q? What letter is that? Similarly with social security numbers, we've seen sevens looking like twos, whereas actually if the client inputs it in once and that flows across, so for example, the client puts their details in, that flows into EstateMin, then it flows into Clio, that is a very accurate source. We know that that data has not changed once. If a mistake was made, we know where the mistake was made. It was made with the client misspelling a name, getting a date of birth wrong, getting a social security number wrong. But once again, like I said, if there is AI involved and it's AI making that data extractions, that's when you need to double check. When we're actually building out our data extraction tool, we highlight where in the document where we've taken that information from. So we'll show you the value of the asset, and then we actually highlight next to it saying this is where we have pulled that valuation across. Do you want to accept or reject it? So that's something that I'd be able to show you a bit more in a demo. But yeah, very, very important.
Wonderful. Isabella, thank you for your wealth of knowledge and making this a great conversation for everyone. If you didn't get your question answered, here's some codes to scan to get in touch with the one and only Direct. So, again, thank you for your wisdom. I'm actually going to go ahead and share a case study of Trust Properties USA. This is what Isabella and I have connected on, how we're an asset for trust and probate and estate attorneys. So I'll start off by saying Trust Properties USA, we're the number one probate and trust realtors with a unified team and system nationwide. We're A plus rated by the Better Business Bureau and have over 250 five-star reviews. I am very proud that this is actually my family legacy business. It's over 25 years of working with attorneys, professional fiduciaries, and our mission has always been to unlock the equity the family worked a lifetime for. So for most families, as you know, the house, the asset is going to be the last big paycheck. And it's our job to work with you to ensure that no money is left on the table and that it's all there for the family. Like I mentioned, we have 16 offices and a network to serve you, so you have someone local. I have an amazing team. They're all dedicated solely to trust and probate real estate. And how we come in to help you all is with the challenge. So the average estate will lose anywhere from $50,000 to $200,000 because it's sold with all of its challenges. I know Isabella showed us some of the tools to keep it all centralized, but some of the challenges are family conflict, out of area management, grief and heightened emotions, limited cash access. Managing a home is like a full-time job, as you all seen, and on top of that, people are grieving, and the home is filled with personal property, occupants and squatters, deferred maintenance, and a lot of them are vacant and uninsured. They have mortgages in arrears and back taxes. Wow, that's a lot for a family to handle, including your office. So, where do we come in? Trust Properties USA is your one call solution, handling the estate from A to Z at zero upfront costs. That's everything from fronting the cost for evictions and lockouts if need be, everything from minor cosmetic renovations to full renovation, helping with personal property sales, disposal, or charities, homeowners insurance for the protection of the estate, foreclosure avoidance. You've all seen some pretty aggressive reverse mortgages, and property security. We're here to be your central eyes and ears on the ground to make sure that asset is safe. So I wanted to share with you all just a case study from our amazing Elizabeth Miffleton. She leads our Inland Empire office here in San Bernardino. She has a wonderful example of our fix and sell strategy. So if you give me a moment, I'm going to share the video.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth, and I'm a realtor with Trust Properties USA. We've helped thousands of families just like yours through the complicated process of selling a property in trust or probate. We handle everything from A to Z, whether it be securing the property or handling an eviction. We help you avoid foreclosure or even with a full-blown renovation. And all of this is with zero upfront cost to you or the estate. I want to make sure that you get to keep the equity that your family worked a lifetime for. Let me introduce you to 6036 Eastwood Avenue in Rancho Cucamonga. This family actually literally watched this home get built from the ground up. As you can see, it's all original. Here at Trust Properties USA, we help you take this to this. or from this to this. Or we can also take this to this. And we did all of this with zero upfront cost to the family so that they could keep the equity that their family worked a lifetime for.
Big shout out to Elizabeth for that amazing transformation. Like we said, we've helped thousands of families through this. We want to be a one-stop shop and central place for you, so that you know your clients are in good hands, and we have direct communication and keep everyone involved for the best possible outcome. Um, Here is my information. I would love to get in touch if you are working with an estate or client that needs an estate evaluation or support. I can connect you with one of our wonderful team members that's local. And now, as promised, it's time to do our Amazon gift card. For those of you that are still here with us, I have this spinny wheel that actually has everyone's email addresses on it, that registered. And when I spin it, it's gonna pick one of you, and let's see who it is. Round of All right. Congrats to everestkilly91@gmail.com. We can send this to you virtually and we will be in touch. But I wanted to just conclude by saying thank you to everyone for being here. I know that change and AI and new systems can seem complicated, but I know Isabella and she's here to make it as seamless and painless as possible. And likewise on our end with the real estate. So thank you so much for being here, and we hope to see you on our next webinar. Take care,
Thank you so much.
everyone.
Thanks, Maya.
Okay, bye.
Bye.